Hi everyone, welcome once again to the Adventures Travel Club television show. We are in St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, Ireland, and we're going to listen for just a little bit to our guide as she gives us some wonderful explanation.
Our first president and our fourth president. They're commemorated here because they were our two Anglican, our two Protestant presidents. First president, a great patriot. His name was Douglas Hyde. Very interested in the Irish language and Irish culture, so he gets his name in Irish. Douglas Tahida, we call him. And our fourth president is Erskine Childers. Short time in office, as you can see. But his father, a man by the same name, wrote what was probably the first spy novel of all times. It was called Riddle of the Sands, about shipping movements in the North Sea before the First World War. Filmed all right, but you rarely see it nowadays, probably too old-fashioned.
Well, Betty, I tell you what, I really do enjoy being here, and you have a little bit of information about the cathedral, right? It has a big history.
I do?
Don't you?
What do you want me to talk about?
The cathedral.
The cathedral itself.
Yeah, the National Cathedral,
well, you
where
know,
Jonathan Swift, of course, was the rector of the
I just think a lot about Jonathan Swift. I think that, you know, he was a much, excuse me, much better, well, I don't know if I should say better, but he did so much more than I thought. I just sort of gave him credit for writing a book, you know.
He wrote several books.
Yeah, but, you know, the one that he's so very
Gulliver's Travels,
is Gulliver's
naturally.
Travel. But I just didn't know the background of it. And then when you can go to an area where you know that he lived and he did his thing, it just brings him back to life. I didn't know too much about his background itself when you read the story, but what he did, all the things that he did about restoring things, which was important to me, because he got the Irish clergy remission for their taxes on their incomes, which they had to pay to Rome. Mm-hmm. But I didn't quite understand his relationship with Esther Johnson. Can you tell me something?
She was a very good supporter of his. Of course, we're looking at his death mass right now, and she was a very prominent lady, and she figured very much so, I think, in his life as well.
I know she did, but what was their relationship is what I wanted to know.
Well, I'll tell you what, I wasn't there, so I couldn't tell you.
Well, he referred,
sure.
But he did write about her.
Oh, yes, right.
And I'm sure I think she was very wealthy.
She was, because she did leave money, you know, for some good works for a hospital to be built. And in fact, they both did. I mean, they both did absolutely wonderful work. And of course, as we know, that St. Patrick's was first started as a Roman Catholic church, and then during the Reformation it became an Anglican church. And so then the church now, of course, they do a lot of ecumenical services here because it is the national cathedral as such.
Well, just like our cathedral too does, the Catholic one in Washington D.C.
The national, well, there's a national shrine there, and then there's also the National Cathedral, which is pretty much of an Anglican church as such. Yes, there. And you know, it's so nice here. I enjoy visiting the cathedral here because of the history, and of course St. Patrick, you know, started right out, well, probably in the meadow right out by the church, was the first place where he started baptizing people. Yeah. And there was a little well there, and then they've rediscovered it, and they brought a Celtic cross, probably looked like that, I imagine, at one time, back into the church. But now let's listen to our guide as we're here in Dublin.
Because of the investment in education, we're the second largest exporters of computer software in the world, half of which, of course, is exported to the United States.
Well, another place, of course, that we love to visit is Trinity College, and this is where the Book of Kells, of course, is kept. Unfortunately, you are not allowed to take photographs in there, and I was a little disappointed this time, Betty, because they keep changing the display on the Book of Kells, and the first time that we saw it, you had a wonderful chance to walk down a long hall and take a look at it.
Right.
Now, now you have to crowd around a bunch of people if you get the chance to see it.
I wonder why that is.
I don't know. You probably get a different administrator of the university, and they probably, you know, change the thing, or I don't know. But anyway, I was a little disappointed in it this time. However, the rest of the display that they had was very good. And of course, these are the grounds of the college here, and there have been, of course, through down through history, there have been so many famous people that have attended the university here, and probably those who are attending today, some of those in the future might be famous, as well.
It's fun to go to a university area, and I was so impressed with all. Oops, somebody's taking a little nap. And
no, well, that's,
and
of course,
frozen,
Oscar Wilde.
Frozen
right.
in stone. Oh, the poor man.
Well, there's a park across the street from Oscar Wilde where he lived, and this is a rather new. We hadn't seen this one before. It was a new statue, and the American College, I believe, is there now. And that's the house where Oscar Wilde lived. And
wasn't that hotel? Is that our
that
hotel right
across
there?
the street was the very first hotel that we stayed at on our very first trip to Ireland. Well, of course, it's time to eat one more time, and of course we do that with great joy and great enthusiasm. And then it's time for us to leave, because we're going to leave Ireland and we're going to go across to Wales, which is a great place to visit. And I think Wales doesn't get the notoriety that it probably should have, because there's just some beautiful things there. And then as we go over to Anglesey, which is island, and there are several islands there on the western part of Wales. We're going to get off of the ship and first we got to get on the ship. Of course, as you see, this takes a little bit of time.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, but now let's get off the ship. Okay, we made that crossing very, very short.
And but what was always interesting to me, when we take one of these ferries and they put the buses on the ferries like this, I stand there with breathless, because I'm so afraid we're going to fall off, that the guy's not going to time us just right, It's scary.
But I tell you what, they know what they're doing. Now, we have come to the town in Wales which has the longest name in Britain.
Yeah, pronounce it.
I can't pronounce it in Welsh, but in English, the translation is the Church of St. Mary in a hollow of white hazel near a rapid whirlpool and near St. Tysilo's Church by the Red Cave.
Well, now, see, everybody can read that, too.
Sure.
Now,
okay.
I wanted you to read it in Welsh.
I don't think I can do that, but some people can. Anyway, it's been abbreviated to Llanfairpwll or Llanfair PG by the locals.
Land, Landfare.
Llanfairpwll. How about that? Okay. Okay. Well,
Is
enough
that
of that.
what you just said?
That's what I just. I think so.
Oh my goodness.
Anyway, we're going on to another town, and of course, this is also in Wales, and we're going to see Carnarvon Castle, and this is where the Prince of Wales was invested on July the 1st of 1969. Now, Prince Charles was the eldest son of Queen Elizabeth II, and she, even though he was going to be the Prince of Wales, she wouldn't let him have the investiture until he was old enough to understand what it was all about. And so, in preparation for this, she sent him to study at the university, to study Welsh, the language, at the University of Wales. And so this was very good, because other princes of Wales just sort of figured, well, this was just a stepping stone to their ascendance to the British throne. However, Queen Elizabeth said, no, he's going to study there and he's going to learn about it, which he did. And the thing is that Prince Charles formed the Prince's Trust, which is a nonprofit organization that's helped over 200,000 disadvantaged young people find jobs and fill their ambitions and to help their lives and their communities. Very nice,
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see what the new breed does with English royalty.
That's
the new
true.
little princess. I don't think that they're going to have the steady habits of.
You never know. You just never know. Well, now we are traveling through Wales, and we are going to get into what we call the Lake District as we get right into that northern central part of England. And of course, you can see a lot of it still looks like what we saw over in Ireland, the little stone fences and things like that.
But it's so rocky. It is so rocky that it's quite understandable then why their buildings are made out of rocks, their fences are made out of rocks.
Good building material.
And they had to get rid of the rocks anyway in order to do any planting. But they didn't have all those facilities for digging up things like...
Do it by hand.
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
And
So,
there weren't too many backhoes in the early days, that's for sure. But there still are some hedgerows, as we see here, too. Which
this is separating one land from one property from another,
yeah,
Marv?
right. And Betty, this little bridge that we passed is several hundred years old, and it was pointed out to us that it's still in use. I mean, so those rocks that you saw are held together pretty well over this little river as we're here, in the Lake District. And to see that an old bridge, which is just centuries old, is still in use is really something. I mean,
they must have had very good engineers
I think
then,
so.
too, Marvin. They're beautiful. I love the rock.
I do too. I think it's great. And you can see the Welsh language.
Can you
right
read
here.
that?
No, I can't. Well, I can read the English part, but that's about it.
Well, you can read the English.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I'm very proud of you.
But this kind of all runs together, where Wales and England, sort of comes together. So you don't really see any border there, but it's all the British Isles anyway. Anyway, we're going to listen to our guide one more time.
So Liverpool developed into the leading port of northern England. It handled all the raw materials that Manchester needed, particularly for its cotton industry, cotton weaving industry. But in the beginning 19th century, Liverpool put its port duties up so high that Manchester went off in a huff, basically decided they weren't going to pay such high port taxes to Liverpool, their neighbouring city, and they built themselves a ship canal that bypassed Liverpool, and it's an enormous canal.
Betty, don't you just love these little churches as we go by in these villages?
Yeah, well, I love the villages. If I had my druthers, I would never take highways. Of course, I'd never get to my destination either, would I? But I love to go into.
You better take because of your sense of direction or lack thereof. I think you better take the highway. However, you have a very good point there, because the thing is that some of these little 2-lane roads are the highways.
Yeah.
And especially as we get over and moving closer to the Lake District, we see that, and they have like millions of travelers. Now, this is Lake Windermere, and we can see someday, Betty, I want to go back just for a vacation and spend in the Lake District. That's so beautiful.
You just do that.
Don't you think I should?
No. I mean, you can do what you like. I'm not. That was fine. I enjoyed it at the time, but it's a little quiet.
Well, it is quiet, but a lot of people come up here from other parts of England because it is quiet, and a lot of people go hiking. A lot of people go boating.
You wouldn't like the hiking part.
Well, I would not. I get on a sailboat over there. That's what I do. No, and there's lots of them, and there's some beautiful hotels to stay at here around the lake. And one of the places that we'd like to visit is a place called Grasmere, and well, you can see the boats right there.
Of course. Now there must be a tide then that comes in and out here, because the boats or do they just pull them up?
They just pull them up because that's landlocked. Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
That's not.
There wouldn't be a
no. It doesn't.
Tide
It doesn't.
Of anything,
doesn't dump out into the ocean, is it?
Okay.
But of course, that this is where so many famous authors, of course, stayed and lived. And Beatrice Potter, of course, was one of them, and she wrote
of Peter Rabbit.
That's right.
She became very famous. And when I was there with Joe, my husband, many, many, many years ago, I bought a set of Beatrice Potter dishes for my kids. Big treat. I don't know what happened to them. They'd probably be worth some money now.
They probably
if I knew
would
where
be,
they
I
were.
would suspect, And there are a lot of little shops around. There are a lot of little Peter Rabbit shops or whatever.
I love
these
going
little
in the
villages,
shops. I love going in the shops.
I do too.
I don't, not to buy necessarily, but
you like to buy?
You like to buy, but you always accuse me of being the buyer, but I'm a great looker.
Well, what I like here, that there are a lot of
Listen to me, what I said about
you're a great
I'm
looker.
A great looker.
Well, okay, we'll catch on that one later. Hey, take a look over here on the left-hand side. A little famous building here. In fact, I bought a painting. So you see, I did buy something. This right here, this is a 2-story thing that sits right there on the river. I mean, this is the smallest house that you can imagine.
I forget what it is.
You got to be very skinny to live in that place.
Wasn't it something to do with the city? Was not that the tax office or something?
I don't know.
I forget.
Could be.
Okay.
Might be. I don't know. Okay. Anyway, as we stop and have lunch at these little villages, it's just really quite beautiful because you see the little streams that are running through here, and it happened to be raining the day that we were there, unfortunately, but we've been there also on sunny days as well. Now, Wordsworth and his wife are buried here in the churchyard, as are two of their children, and they lived very close to the cemetery here, and they were very despondent because two of their children, they had three more children, but two of them were buried here, and so they decided that they would move. So they did. They bought another house where they had a beautiful view of the mountains and also of the lake as well. And they lived there for, I think, about 36 years, probably until he passed away.
Yeah, he didn't have a lot of money. I mean, they had some problems.
They were pretty poor in the beginning, right?
Well,
it wasn't until he made a little bit that they were able to move.
Yeah,
you're right.
because they had problem paying their bills, and they always got around to paying them, But this happens so often with famous people. Their early years are not
struggling.
Yeah.
True.
And then some of them go off the deep end when they finally become successful, which is sad.
Well, I think that he and his wife and the other children, from what I have read, that they had a pretty happy life there. And then they travel quite a bit as well. Now, this is the parish church that you can see where it joins, of course, the churchyard there. And this is the inside of it. And I thought it was really just quite beautiful. They're very typically English, as we see, with the open beams, and the ceiling. And
austere.
Just very, very, very nice. And however, we went inside and talked, and there's a baptistry there, and talked in it. This is an Anglican church, and they had a woman priest, which of course is a little for some of us Roman Catholics. It's kind of a little jars you just a little bit, and then you get used to it. And this guy, okay, well that's fine. And that's the organ back there. It's beautiful, beautiful. Betty, my best shot. I really like this.
Oh, you're going to get a bird somewhere.
No, it's not a bird. No,
huh?
we shot this once before when we were there, and I said, I've got to find this again. It's if you just look up, it's this little sign, because this just to me represents old England. See, and it's a public footpath.
Sure, and Bigorre. No, that's Irish then.
Right. Well, there are probably a few Irish people that visited there as well,
Yeah.
But as we travel along here in the Lake District, it is really, really quite beautiful, as you can see. Even in the rain, it's beautiful.
But it's not pristine. Well, I guess in a way it is.
Sure.
But it's rough.
Yeah, well, it is. Part of that landscape is very, very rocky, like you say, and the heather is growing out there as well, and it's very nice. But now we're going to travel a little bit northward a lot northward, because we're going to be heading to Scotland, and that you see. This is what I thought when we first went to Scotland. I thought it was all like this, but we're not quite there yet. We're still in the land of Peter Rabbit, and if you listen very carefully, you might learn a little bit more about Peter.
Peter sat down to rest. He was out of breath and trembling with fright, and he had not the least idea which way to go. Also, he was very damp with sitting in that can.
Well, I just love the story of Peter Rabbit. But we have to move on, and we're going to another famous place, and this is Carlisle, the city of Carlisle. And also, we are going to visit today Carlisle Castle, and that's where Mary, Queen of Scots, was imprisoned.
So Carlisle Castle on the right-hand side. The flag flying above the main turret there is the English Heritage flag. And that's the government organisation that owns and looks after many of our historic houses and monuments.
Well, as we see right here, it says Carlisle Castle, England's first border castle. Carlisle is right on the northern border of England, and of course then you're going to cross that and you go into Scotland. Now there were lots and lots through through history, there were lots and lots of skirmishes between the Scottish and between the English, as we all know, and lots of famous people, the Robert the Bruce, and of course Mary Queen of Scots. And I mean, you go down through history, and there's just so much of it. It gets confusing unless you have some sort of a timeline.
Or go watch the movies. You know, a lot of the movies have made for that time. And
that's true.
I really mean it. It gives you a background.
Yeah, it does give you a background, and then there have been some very good ones that that have been made. But
those always fascinated me, the way those gates come down
for protection. And of course, we know around the castle too there was a moat around that, which of course held water. And they have done a job inside this of putting sort of kind of new furniture in there to give us a feeling. But
excuse me, what's those things hanging on this? I don't remember those. What are those hanging up there for?
Me. I think those are like herbs or something like that. That they have.
You don't know either. In other words.
Yeah, I don't know either. So. I didn't get up there close enough to find out.
I think that's a pretty good guess, though. That's okay. That's all right.
But this was Carlisle was, of course, a big fortress. Boy, look at that. You could roast the whole...
A man.
Yeah, something in there. A giant. Goliath or somebody in there.
I mean, that provided heat for it as well as for cooking. That would be why they would have that as a... And now, did they have peat up there in Scotland, too, as well as in Ireland?
I don't know. Of course, we're still in England, that's a good question. I don't know, because there are bogs around there, so it could be that that there might be, but I think that they probably use wood fire. Now this inscriptions here, excuse me just a moment, are left over from when the Romans were here, and they believe that was some sort of a Roman altar, maybe to one of their deities as such. But it's interesting that has lasted all of these years. But I think it was probably pretty well protected.
Well, it was etched in stone, Marv.
You're absolutely right. Was etched in stone. And do you know what else is very close to here, Betty?
You tell me. You just love doing that.
Hadrian's Wall.
Oh my gosh! Of course.
Yeah, Hadrian's Wall. And
wow.
Yeah. Well, the Carlisle Castle, of course, is sort of on the western part of this part of England. And
Excuse me. That was a jail?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
You missed that, huh?
I missed it.
Well, it looked like, with the bars on it, it looked like it might be a place where they put the prisoners. But
or maybe kept the booze.
Kept it under lock and key.
I don't know. Yeah. Anyway, what I was going to say is that along that line where Hadrian's Wall was very close to it, Carlisle Castle's on the west, and Newcastle upon the Tyne is on the east portion of the island there. That shows you there. Oh, there we go. See, now here we are. There's Hadrian's Wall right there, and there's the border up there, and there's Carlisle Castle. That's the sort of acquaint you with.
Was Hadrian's Wall a separation between Scotland and England?
I believe that's what it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. Well, but of course there was no England or Scotland at that time, because that was at the time of the the Romans. So that probably had a different name at that time. I don't want to get caught on that, but I'm just sort of imagine that that's exactly what it was, hopefully. Anyway, I want to talk a little bit about Mary Queen of Scots, okay? She's captured my imagination a lot, because she was put here, in this castle, and she had, Betty, you think if you're going to be a prisoner in a castle, that you're going to be like locked up, like what you just saw, where you thought that was, but she had a document that said that she kind of had the run of the place from what we were reading, so she was able to stay there. Of course, Elizabeth wanted to keep her there because Mary Queen of Scots still was a pretender, to the English throne. So she was a danger. She came back to England. She could have had those supporters.
Isn't she a mean-looking thing?
Oh yeah, But anyway, so she.
Well, I'm sorry,
yeah.
but
Well, there's a portrait of her, and also her son, who was James. Now, this was done in 1583. So, and we know that later on, of course, Elizabeth had Mary executed. So that ended that as far as her being a pretender to the British throne. And they were cousins. I mean, this is something else. This shows the village of Carlisle, how it must have looked way, way, way back when. And next time I go, I'd like to visit I don't know if that cathedral is still there. It probably still is. But we just didn't have enough time on that day, because just going through the castle alone, and of course, what you see right here, that is in the castle itself. And they had some really marvelous displays. And, I have to congratulate the English, Betty, because when we have gone back time after time, we see that the displays in most of these public places have become better and better and better, and there's more explanation to all of it as well. So it's really great.
These are all the different kings.
Yeah, and there were so many, and of course every time that there's Bonnie Prince Charlie. Hi, Bonnie Prince Charlie.
Is that who that is?
Uh-huh.
Oh, my.
Isn't he look like a dandy?
He sure does.
Yeah.
He probably was.
With that hairdo, it's pretty something else.
I think it's amazing, things that we do like this makes me think of the Arc de Triomphe, but of course it's not even similar. But any time that you have an edifice that's made of rock, there's just something about it, the stability of it, the grandeur of it.
Well, look how long it's stood.
Yeah.
To me, that is absolutely phenomenal that it has stood that long, but is still been in use. You see, so it wasn't just like, okay, well, we're going to leave this as a relic, and they're still using that. And of course, it was an outpost for such a long time, and a place of defense against the Scots.
I think it's the facade, Marv, that grabs me, because it's not the finished concrete or the smooth bricks and things. It's the antiquity of it, that you look at that and you look at like this too.
Yeah.
Of course, it just grabs you. You get a real feeling of what went into building things like this in those days. How many lives were lost, the time, and how they improvised, what they had to do to build these structures like this.
Well, I'll tell you, it's amazing to me, because from the pyramids on down, as you see construction, and again, we think, you and I've mentioned this several times before, we think that we're so smart today, and that we know how to do all this stuff. Well, maybe we do, and we can build other types of buildings, but that these buildings have lasted through the centuries, and that there have been hundreds upon thousands of people that have gone through this. It's just amazing. Yeah.
I love the catapults that they used to defend themselves.
Yeah.
And that's when you talk about a fulcrum.
Uh-huh.
Well, we learned it from them. Well,
of course.
It's not us.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Now, this carving that you see on the wall, now this has lasted in stone for centuries upon centuries as well, and it's just really quite beautiful to see. And there, of course, we can see a little bit. We're up on the ramparts, and we can look down and see where the probably the original moat was right there. But it's time for us to go. So, we don't have any more time to spend in Carlisle. We're going to head on up to Scotland, and so, Betty, this has been a fun time to be there.
Very interesting, informative, and such a great group of people.
That's true. Hey, it's time for us to go, but if you're interested, I should say, in any of Betty's trips, give her a call at
488-7443.
We'll see you next time. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.